coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are on the free Odyssey app, good Tuesday morning. I said yesterday that it's a good thing that the weather was going to clear and the Mets could get back out on the field and try to wash the stink off of them from the opening series sweep by the Brewers. Well, I wish it would have been rained out because the outcome last night was just as bad and felt even worse than any of the three games that they played against the Brewers because they get shut out. They actually get some good pitching. They're playing defense fine during the first 9 innings, and then everything falls apart on them in the 10th. So they are 0-4. Here we go. But the New York Yankees out there in Arizona win another game. There is an energy around them that hasn't been here in a number of years, and they are rolling with Juan Soto. Luis Gil is great last night, and the Yankees are a 5-0 juggernaut right now. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
You know, I'm overstimulated.
Overstimulated?
I have sports overstimulation. Last night was insane. I mean, you got a couple hockey games going on. You got a couple unbelievable women's basketball games going on. And, of course, you had these baseball games going on. And I'm going back and forth from the Rangers to the basketball to Mania and, all over the place. And I have to say that Mania was great.
Yep.
You're sitting there and you get your updates and you're like, all right, I got to go back. And then the Mets are up and it's like 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3. I'm just like, they can't buy a hit right now. And they are just about as futile as I don't think any of us thought they were going to be this bad offensively.
Not offensively, no. I mean, I thought that they'd at least be able to compete. It was the rotation I had, or everybody had the most concern about. But, I mean, right now you've got Lindor's done absolutely nothing. Nimmo's done absolutely nothing. You go throughout that lineup, those are the two guys that McNeil's done absolutely nothing. Those three guys have been the biggest culprits.
And those guys were all supposed to have, like, bounce-back, years. And Pete Alonso was supposed to have a better year. And he's okay, but still he's not, if he wants, like, 8 years, $40 million, this is not the way to go about getting it. You have to remember that he has Boris as an agent, and this is not going to continue this way, I don't think for the next 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, eventually they're going to break through, and eventually the bats will wake up, and so on and so forth. And maybe this, if it does rain and they don't play a couple days, maybe that's a good thing for them. And then when they get away from home, maybe they can win some games. Who knows? Right now, just looking at the Met fans in the stands, when they pan the stands and they show the fans, it's just like, man, you're feeling it all over again, and it's really unfortunate. But all I know is that if it continues, Pete Alonso will be traded. There is no question in my mind that he will be traded. I mean, remember when 2 years ago, 2022, at the beginning of the Yankee season, this is when the Yankees came out and they said what they offered to Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
Remember how everybody was pissed off? How does he not sign that and all this? How does he not sign that contract? And then Aaron Judge was ticked off.
Of course, and rightfully so, because Brian Cashman basically said, hey, we tried to sign him. He just said no. And at the time, we felt like that was a fair deal for Aaron Judge. Turned out that it wasn't with what he did the next year.
And what he did is he went out and he proved himself, and he carried the team on his back and had an MVP season.
Absolutely.
And right now, that is the situation that Pete Alonso finds himself in. And, of course, when the Yankees finally do sign Aaron Judge, what do? They say you are the captain. Because the way you act and the way that you carry yourself and the way that you lead your team, you are the captain. And that's it's a pretty lofty status for somebody who puts on the pinstripes, as we know. And there is a history there with other players that fit the bill. And it's the same thing, in hockey and in basketball, for whatever sport it is, where a guy is legitimately a captain and he becomes the captain. The Mets don't have one. The Mets don't have anybody that's even remotely close to that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we underestimate Francisco Lindor in that clubhouse. I do think he's very well respected, and it's not like he had a bad year last year by any stretch of the imagination. Now, he's off to a miserable start here, but Pete Alonso's never sort of been that guy, and we love Pete, and we wanted him to be signed, but it's not. He doesn't have that C on the chest type of feel. I do think that Lindor is more of that personality. I mean, Pete His personality is just he's goofy. That's who he is. He doesn't have that like, hey guys, get in line. We got to focus here. We got to be great. I mean, he does that stuff like Donnie Stevenson, that character he made up.
But the point being is that are you going to pay this guy 8 years, $40 million a year?
Well, I'll tell you.
Are you going to end up doing that? No, of course. As we sit here right now, hell no.
We're also 4 games into the season, to be fair. But if they are 10, 12 games under 500 at the All-Star break, I don't. In the trading deadline, I don't think that it matters what his numbers are. Honestly, I think that it's going to be about team performance. Because you can, as Ralph Kiner once said when he went to get more money back in the day, he said, I led the league in home runs. Well, we finished last. We could finish last without you.
That's right.
So I think that David Stearns is probably going to look at not so much what Pete Alonso is doing individually, but how this team is built. And if they stink and they're one of the worst teams in the National League, which they are right now after 4 games, and there's no reason to keep them. There just isn't. I'm sorry. As much of a fan favorite as he is.
It doesn't matter. It's about building a winning team. I mean, like, I always go back to when the Rangers sent out that letter telling us that they were starting to get rid of our captain, Ryan McDonough, JT Miller. They were getting rid of these guys.
Yeah.
And, it's a hard pill to swallow. Nobody wants to lose players that you have a lot of respect for, players that you love. But if the organization recognizes that there's something amiss, that something's not right, or they're not playing the same way that they were, say, 2 or 3 years ago, then they have to make the change. They have to pull the plug. There's no question about that. And I think that's, the Mets and David Stearns are going to be into that kind of like decision-making process where no matter how popular anybody is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, as you just said, we can lose with you or without you. And if we're going to lose with you, we ain't paying you $40 million a year. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, for 8 years at the age of 30 now when he hits free agency.
It's a weird thing. It's a weird spot. And he's going to have to wake up, and they're going to have to wake up. But I firmly believe, and I think you and I are in lockstep with this one, that trading deadline comes, and they're nowhere near a wild card. They're going to be selling off, and they should be selling off.
Yeah, and this is not going to be like Tom Seaver getting traded. It's not going to be this generation's heartbreak of that. I know there's going to be people, if it does go that way, that will be very upset. And, I read one of the stories by the Post columnist, and it might have been Heyman, who said, he's down at spring training, he looks around, and everybody's got an Alonso jersey on and all this stuff. I mean, if they stink, then who cares? I mean, honestly, it doesn't. You don't hang on to a guy who you could get when you need to. The biggest thing that they're trying to do is rebuild the farm system, when you could probably get a ton of prospects.
Assuming he's playing well and he's doing well and he's not injured, and people really do want a power bat in their lineup when we get to that point.
Yeah, and I do think
if he's having a good year or a decent year,
right, then David Stearns is going to make that deal. And this guy is a Mets fan, grew up a Mets fan, understands what it's like to have favorite players. But if that's the best way to rebuild the team and the farm system and move in the right direction, then he's going to do it. I don't think he's going to hang on to the guy for marketing reasons.
I don't think so either. What you want to market is you want to market winning. And, again, I go back to both the Knicks and the Rangers. Both the Knicks and the Rangers are winning, albeit last night the Rangers didn't win. But the fact of the matter is the Garden is alive. Like, people want to go to these games. They want to buy the tickets. The sponsorships are alive. All of that stuff that comes along with winning. Yeah, we love our players, and we love the players that are playing, like a Jalen Brunson, of course, and we want to watch him play. And the fact of the matter is like that's a guy that, like, maybe it is Lindor, I don't know, but that's a guy that the Mets don't have.
No, I agree that they don't have Aaron Judge, they don't have Jalen Brunson, they don't have Artemi Panarin, they don't have they don't have that guy. But I do think when you're saying that there's no leader really in the clubhouse, I do think that Lindor more than Alonso is probably that guy that the guys in the clubhouse look up to. He goes about his business, professionally. He's a guy that answers all the questions correctly. To me, he's the guy. He's the model for everybody to sort of follow. But he hasn't come here and been Jalen Brunson or Artemi Panarin when you're talking about a trade and or a free agent signing that changed the organization. I mean, he's been good, but he's not those guys.
Yeah, he's not Juan Soto, that's for sure.
Well, yes, and Juan Soto, hopefully for the
Makes
Yankee
another
fan,
defensive play last night.
Yep, and hopefully for the Yankee fan, this isn't a one-year wonder with him, but if they continue to play like this and he looks that energized and they have a playoff run, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to want to play anywhere else. But then again, money talks, because this is a guy who was offered hundreds of millions of dollars several times from different places and turned it down because he wanted to hit free agency. So he's also got Boris as an agent, so he's going to be pressured to take top dollar, and if the Yankees aren't offering top dollar, but that's a long way to go here. Long way to go with
I know, it's just that when you start out the way both of these teams started out, completely opposite of each other, and one getting everything they could have ever asked of, in Juan Soto, and getting something out of him and changing the dynamic of the team, they've gotten that. The other thing, too, is Volpe goes 4 for 4 last night.
Yeah.
And, he changed his swing this offseason. And he is not swinging through things anymore. He's taking a lot of pitches. And this young man seems like he has found a home. Like, in other words, he's not the guy in the lineup, which is good for him. He could just be a guy in the lineup. And all he has done is gone about his business, and he's gotten better and better and better.
Yeah, that's been an underrated part of this offense at the beginning of the season so far, is his performance and how he looks so much different and taking pitches and comfortable and not being as nervously aggressive as we saw him last year. And credit the Yankees for sticking with him throughout the lower times last year and believing in him, and then bringing him back and having him be the starting shortstop again. I mean, that if that continues this way, he could have a huge year for them. And it just helps having that other bat with Soto there as well, for every one of these guys.
But you know what it really helps? It helps the fact that he's not a big money guy.
Yeah.
They got big money in other guys, and he's performing above his pay grade. And he plays the most important position in baseball. And he plays it relatively well. I mean, he's really good. And I would just say that, they know what they saw last year. They saw glimpses of somebody that was, starting to figure it out. And when you talk about young players figuring it out, like Deuce McBride figuring it out, that's exactly what he is for the Yankees. He's a kid that is finally, he put the time and effort in this offseason. I read an article yesterday about his offseason workout plan and what he was trying to do with his swing and everything else. And look, he'll have his slumps like everybody will during the baseball season. But the good news is that Juan Soto go hitless last night, and he can go 4 for 4, and they can win a game and dominate without Juan Soto having to come through in the clutch.
Yeah, and we don't know what the season's going to end up with the Astros and the Diamondbacks, but these are two teams that are very good, have been very good. Diamondbacks going to the World Series last year, and the Yankees aren't beating up terrible baseball teams that have no expectations. I mean, that's another part of this. Meanwhile, while the Mets are losing to the Tigers, who haven't lost themselves, but nobody's expecting the Detroit Tigers to go and win a division this year. So I don't know. I don't want to be too over the top with it, because I do think we could very easily be fooled by 4 or 5 games, but I had very little expectation for this Mets team to compete in the NL East, where I thought that the Yankees obviously could be up there in a tough AL East. But I think that there's a real chance that this is not a mirage and not a fluke, and we see the Mets being under 500 the entire year and the Yankees sitting atop their division for the entire year. There's a good chance of that.
You have one team getting off to an amazing start and another team that now has got to try to fight its way back to 500. I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. And one team is on the road and the other team is at home. And I think sometimes it's a little bit harder to win at home, especially when things aren't going well.
Yeah. I mean, last night, just the pressure and every inning going by, and then you see them kicking the ball around in the 10th, and then all of a sudden that's it. Then it's 5-0. But it's a shame. It just feels like how many of these really good starts have been wasted by Met pitchers the last 5 or 6 years? And he's usually with Jacob deGrom. It was usually him. The guy could never get a win because the team couldn't hit, and his ERA was under 1 for half the season. And you get Sean Manaea last night, who is dealing. He is great. He's everything that you could ask for from a guy who needed to be a stopper after the 3-game sweep, and he gave you all that, and you couldn't hit. I mean, it's just that's what bad teams do. They can never put it together. You know,
that's exactly right, man. That is exactly right. I watching it, and so I'm sitting there watching the Ranger game, of course, and then I'm going back and forth with the Iowa basketball game with Caitlin Clark and, of course, Angel Reese. That was an unbelievable. That Caitlin Clark is Larry Bird reincarnated. That's who she is. She is an amazing basketball player. The things that she does, everybody talks about her shooting. She's Steph Curry-like when it comes to shooting, but that's just one single part of what she does. How she passes, how she moves after she sends a pass, how she gets open, the give and goes, the passes that sometimes even her own teammates aren't even aware of that are coming.
Yeah.
That's the way she plays. And the ball is always in her hands. Like, she always has to make the decision, I feel like. And she gets rebounds, and she gets steals. And that's the way, I don't know, the person that came to my mind was Larry Bird watching this last night.
Yeah, it really is amazing that we are sitting here the first week of baseball where things are supposed to be exciting with the teams, and there was no doubt that the women's college basketball game last night was electric.
Both games, by the way.
Right, and you had the New York Mets basically putting their entire fan base to sleep. Right. I mean, it's just...
Well, you had Juju Watkins for USC, and you had Paige Beckers for UConn.
Yep.
And they're going back and forth with each other. I mean, there are some unbelievable women's basketball teams, and the drama's ratcheted up with the LA Times and the Washington Times and Mulkey and her team not out there for the national anthem, and the Iowa team, holding hands and locking arms for the national. I mean, there's all this drama that's surrounding all of it.
Great storylines, man.
It's unbelievable. And then to watch, your best players. Angel Reese had a great game last night too. She had 20 rebounds.
Yeah.
But when you watch Juju Watkins, you watch Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers, and their abilities are ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very exciting. Jerry's going to have that and more coming up with his first update of the morning. It is Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.